How's it
Before we
going,
dig
guys?
into today's episode, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Car Vertical. So, we bought a car recently. In fact, we bought several cars recently, and one thing's been consistent. We've wanted to see exactly what the history of the vehicle was before handing over precious, hard-earned cash. So, how do you do that? Well, somewhere like Car Vertical pulls over 900 different sources across more than 30 countries and can reveal things like accident history, mileage rollbacks, theft records, ownership history, and even historical photos in some cases. All valuable data for the vehicle that you're looking to buy. As a new vehicle owner just now, it's really important, and in fact, having the right data and knowing some of these things can actually help you negotiate the price down, but also just generally avoid you getting stung badly. So, if you are about to buy a used car, don't rely purely on the appearance of said car, and use my code Louis20 for a discount on your report on said car. That's code LOUIS20. You can also head to carvertical.com/Louis20 or use the link right at the top of the description. Again, that's code LOUIS20. Links in the description. Now, time to get to today's episode. Enjoy, guys. It's a great one. How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 177 of TALK4, the quickfire podcast where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me, and let me introduce our incredible and very special guest for today, Colonel Maryann Karlen, who's going to be answering our questions today. So, Colonel Karlen, it's an absolute pleasure to meet you again, this time virtually, but how are you doing today? Welcome to the show. Can't wait to have a great conversation with you today.
I'm doing great today. I'm happy to be here.
I know it's going to be a fantastic conversation. Having been over to Edwards and seen test pilot school and everything going on over there, I mean, you have an incredible job, and digging into that today is not only going to be a true honor, but I'm super excited about it. I love the industry. I love Edwards. I love test pilot school. So conversations like these are pretty easy to have. I kind of alluded to it there, but the best place to start in a podcast like this is really just a bit of a rundown of who you are, what you do, what day-to-day kind of looks like. I know that's super variable for someone like you, but if you can try and sort of squeeze that into a couple of minutes, we'll have that little intro, and then we'll get into the 4 big questions after that. So start us off there, and yeah, tell us all about it.
All right. So I'm Colonel Maryann Yeti Karlen, Commandant of the United States Air Force Test Pilot School, out here in beautiful, sunny California, which it is still living up to its reputation of being beautiful and sunny. Not that I don't want to be here, but this would have been a great flying day had that opportunity been for today. So what I do is I have the privilege of leading, dare I say it, the world's premier test pilot school, where I get to work with an incredible staff, cadre of instructors, and truly humbling students out here.
Yeah, it's a truly incredible job. And yeah, like I said, I got to walk those halls, and incredible history in the place. And I like to say that Edwards was like this perfect sandwich, really, of that rich history, everything super cool going on in present day, just every great aircraft you could possibly imagine. If you like fighter jets and bombers, or interested in that, everything out there on the flight ramp, and then everything happening in the future as well. So many exciting developments all happening there. So it's kind of this trio of just everything. It's like a mythical place, and you're right in the middle of it. So it's really really cool to see. And I figured I just wanted to start us off as well. Something that I took away from my trip to your office. What an incredible place to work from, and what an incredible history there. Can you tell us a little bit about that to start with, and then we'll get into those questions?
Yeah, you were touching on it, and I was nodding because I think at the test pilot school is the heart of the test enterprise, right? And it is where you have the past, present, and future kind of collide. You got to walk the halls, and you see, you feel it as you walk through it, the history of our craft of test and capability development. And then you have this group of amazing cadre who are here, and they, in a sense, represent the present, right? The best and the brightest who've come back and to teach the next generation of testers walking around the halls. And then you have the students, and whenever you look at them, you're like, okay, this Air Force, we're going to be a-okay.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Seeing it in the faces of the students.
Definitely. Well, we're going to dig into all of that very shortly. And I think the best place for us really to kind of start with this all today then is just a bit of the backstory then. So I was looking obviously at your history. I mean, it's an incredible, truly an incredible career, long, and a lot of stuff that you've done, a lot of aircraft flown, but a lot of places that you've been to as well. I know a lot of your career is spent at Edwards. I know you also, as we joked about, got shipped out to the UK at one point as well. But if we go back before all of that and we go towards just what interested you in this industry, any particular things that inspired you, literally just go right back and tell us where it all began and then how you kind of progressed that career to this incredible place that you're at now.
I'd love to. So I would be what you would call a high energy child. So trying to get me to focus on schoolwork was not exactly an easy task. And I remember it was in the second grade, I had a teacher hand me a book about the space program. And when you read about the space program, you read about test pilots, and you're not going to read about test pilots and not read about Edwards. So right there in the second grade, I was like, I'm going to go be a test pilot. And I remember my parents, right? I'm one of four. I'm struggling in school. I was also wearing the thickest glasses you could possibly have, right? And my parents are like, how do we tell her she can't do that? And they're like, well, maybe we just won't. So they didn't. And, I'm like, okay. And I worked on my grades, got a scholarship to ROTC, went to the University of Maryland, got aeronautical engineering degree. But in my junior year is when the Air Force started allowing laser eye surgery. And that's when my parents were like, okay, well, I guess like nobody's going to tell her no. So I got the laser eye surgery, got my pilot slot. I remember one of my classmates going, hey, there's this master's degree. You can go just straight get your master's degree out of your undergraduate degree before you go to pilot training. I'm like, no, I'm going to pilot training right away. And then after pilot training and flying C-17s, there I am sitting in crossing the Atlantic Ocean with my laptop, doing my master's degree remotely, going, why didn't I just spend one more year getting my master's degree before that? But that's what I did. I did my master's degree online from North Carolina State University in aeronautical engineering, flying the C-17 operationally, and then applied to test school and got selected. So from there, as you kind of alluded to, my career has been very test focused. Absolutely fell in love with it. Did tests here at Edwards, got the opportunity to go do tests internationally at Boscombe Down, and then came back here as director of operations. Got to go do operational tests with Air Mobility Command. And then I stumbled upon the opportunity to come back here as the deputy and realized I loved teaching test. So championed to come back as the commandant and was successfully able to make that happen.
That's really incredible. So that's how you got to where you are right now. And I'd love to dig into test pilot school as well then. So people listening in today, test pilot school, for those who aren't typically that interested in aviation, or someone listening in today who doesn't know too much about the industry, I feel like most people in aviation know test pilot school just as it's just that mythical legend that's out there that a bit like Edwards, really. Just it's part of so much history. So obviously today you're leading test pilot school, and that's developing the future test pilots. And test pilots, as we know, they can go on to being astronauts as well afterwards. So it's kind of like a massive part of a big pipeline, but test is so important. But in 2026, what really is test pilot school all about? So can you talk us a bit through sort of like the mission set there, everything going on, like what these student pilots are going through, and then we'll figure out kind of a bit of test pilot school for the people listening in today, and then dig into it a little bit on the bigger scale after that.
Yeah, I love that. So the first thing I'll say is you said test pilot, test pilot, test pilot, test pilot. That is a fraction of who we teach. So I have test pilots. I have remotely operated pilots. I have combat systems operators. I have space systems operators. I've got engineers, analysts, We'll have maintainers come through. It is a pretty broad spectrum of students that we bring in. We call them specialty codes for both the Air Force and the Space Force. So that would be, I'd say, the first kind of what does it look like in 2026? It looks like a lot of students and from different backgrounds and specialties. We instead of like calling, hey, at the end, I've produced this test pilot, I've created this test pilot, I get to say, I've actually created a test leader.
Yeah.
So we've undergone a pretty significant modernization in the last 3-4 years, and we've realized we need to figure out, yes, I need that skilled operator, and I need that skilled engineer, but I actually need them to teach them how to be testers, leaders, thinkers, and innovators, right? There's a broader skill set that our graduates need in order to be successful out testing for the DAF.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, one of the big changes you'll have seen is, yep, we still do a lot of flying or a lot of operating of satellites, but what we actually do is we'll do a lot of, hey, how do we lead a team that doesn't look like most of the DAF, right? So when you look at the Department of the Air Force and the military in general, you see a very homogeneous kind of structure. It looks very military. Everyone's in uniform, and as the commander, you can kind of say, "Go." Here we're a very mixed team, right? The military, I think, is a third of this entire base. And probably maybe a third of the Air Force Test Center as a whole. So you'll see a lot more civilians. You'll see a lot of contractors. You'll see prime contractors, and you'll also see support contractors that are working for the government. So you'll see reservists. So we call it a very purple team out here. And leading in that sort of environment is much different, where it is truly, hey, I have to build a coalition. I have none of the authority over half of these people, but I have all the responsibility to get the mission done. So trying to teach our testers how to navigate that successfully so that they can get those capabilities out to the warfighter. And then, I can't tell every student what they're going to see, right? You mentioned it earlier. There's a million different things they could go be asked to do outside of just what a core kind of mission set would be. We're inventing the future out here, and we don't always know what that's going to look like. So we got to prepare the students to be critical thinkers and to be able to innovate when they get to the units. Our kind of our values are being credible, adaptable, and warfighter focused. So how do we instill that into the students, and not just how do we operate this one system through this test program? So it's again, I think a bigger spectrum, broader mission set than you would have seen 50, 60 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's evolving all the time. So obviously everything that you're doing there has to follow suit as well. And yeah, it makes me wonder as well, because I really want to hammer into people listening in today, really just what being a person who goes to test pilot school really means for them. So in terms of that kind of the history and the legacy, I know we sort of alluded to it there, walking the halls of test pilot school, all the former commandants, all the stuff that's happened there, but just some of the big highlights throughout history. Could you maybe just walk us through just a little bit about really what that means going into test pilot school and being a student there? What does that mean from a history perspective? What are you walking into, and why is that such a thing to be proud of?
So we don't take entry level individuals. We take people who have been experienced out in combat, out in the labs, out in the program offices, out on the ops floors. We have a really great enlisted course, so we're taking our enlisted leaders and we're bringing them in. So what you're seeing is highly experienced individuals who are credible from the community that they come into, and then molding them into that test leadership. So I think it's important to say, I'm not going to create an incredible pilot, right? We select incredible pilots, incredible operators, incredible boom operators to come in here and mold and shape them. And a lot of those individuals who are drawn to test pilot school, that actually, I haven't seen that change over the years, right? It's people who go, okay, I've been out there, I want to do something new and different. I want to create something. I want to leave something for the next generation, right? I like to think of our blue patches, as we call them, the guardians of the warfighter. And I think you've seen that throughout the history of the school, where it's, hey, how do I get this next war-winning capability out to the field, right? How do I work with technology to get a material solution out there? You think a lot about risk. And when people think about risk, they go straight to like risk acceptance, right? But it's actually, when you look at it, we call ourselves world-class risk managers, right? So yeah, sometimes I got to accept the risk, right? I want to accept it so that wingman, that co-pilot who's sitting in there, they're not accepting that risk, right? We want to accept that risk. But sometimes we can also steer that. We can mitigate it in a way that makes sure that we're reducing it as much as possible. We can shift it around, between different areas. So it's really understanding that risk management, and I think you've seen that throughout the history. Now, I would say we have more tools than Chuck Yeager did. Right, I got a better modeling and simulation, so I know what we're going to step to when we get out there. So there's a lot of ground assets again that help us know better what risk we can see and continue to manage those. But I think those principles of, hey, I want to develop technology. I want to be warfighter focused and make sure we're getting superior technology out there. And I want to be part of that risk management process. I haven't seen that change through the years.
I really like it. It's really, really important. And, just kind of something I'm pondering on a little bit over there as well is, of all my life, I've seen people in sports backgrounds, in business, obviously now in the podcast and on military bases. And, I've known people from all kind of walks of life in high performance. And I've seen people who are extremely intelligent, squander opportunities and not have the work ethic and the attitude really to go into what they're doing and be super successful. And I've seen the opposite of that spectrum too. Some of the people less talented or less naturally gifted, but just absolute workhorses, right? And they get really, really far. So I really wanted to just kind of dig into that as well. So, how much of success would you say at test pilot school really comes down to like just the raw intelligence of being, a future test pilot versus like the attitude and the work ethic? Where's the balance of that? And yeah, walk us through some of these people coming through the door as well. What are they like?
Oh, that's great. You require both. You're not gonna get into this program without being superior in what you're doing. But you find that most of those superior people work their butts off. So it takes a lot of both to have some of that just raw skill. If you're deficient in areas, having the leadership of oneself to go dig into those areas and get stronger in them, and then just the pure work ethic of the students coming in here. It is coming through the program. You will, well, I guess even going to the selection process, because I think it'll say a lot to what that looks like. Are the Air Force and the Space Force personnel systems will send out a board call, right? So this is where all the applicants come in. We review all of their records. We would review their academic records down to the class level. Like, how did you do in calculus coming through this program? Because you do have to have a kind of a STEM background educationally to be able to come in. Most of these students have master's degrees. Some of these students have PhDs. It's incredible, the level of applicant. But as I said earlier, I can't teach them how to be an engineer, and I can't teach them how to be a great boom operator, right? They have to come with that skill and that record. And then actually a lot of the leadership, you need to see performance records that are just outstanding, right? This is going to be somebody who's immediately upon graduation going to be leading teams of contractors and engineers from all different areas and bring them together to focus on the mission. Like these are just truly humbling people who have done amazing things through their career. Then we have to score them on a board. And that right there is just kind of the ticket to play. So you got to score well on the board, and then we bring them out and we put them through a ground and an operational kind of interview. So think of a normal interview with a board who's trying to suss out your background, make sure it really matches what your resume says. But then we take them airborne, right? We'll hand them some test cards and say, here, go fly this aircraft you've never been in and tell us. Let's see what you got. See how you can keep your situational awareness, if you've heard that term, up, how you can operate in a dynamic environment. We do that for our pilots, for our air battle managers, for our engineers. We'll put them in just various aircraft for our space operators. They're going to go operate some simulators to make sure that they're able to do that. And we can see them in the environment in which they're going to be in at school. And from there, we'll down select that to the class sizes from there. So it's quite an extensive process for there. But yeah, you can definitely see that it's truly gifted individuals who have a lot of grit to come through this school.
It also sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, one of those schools really where there's so much work to do and the expectations high is a very high bar, and that bar has been set by a lot of people before them. But it also sounds like just a hell of a time, right? I mean, what a fun thing to do. What an incredible career to be starting on as a test pilot, right?
It is, I kind of liken it to a deployment. It doesn't really matter where you are. It matters with who you're with and what you're doing, right? So even though they're, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, they're doing it with a team. And there's something about doing that together, that joint suffering that really brings them together. And it is fun to watch how much fun they have with being here.
Yeah, definitely. It goes so far beyond just flying, and I think there's something to be said for that too. I mean, the flying is a massive critical part where you learn a lot of lessons about yourself and the aircraft and the industry. But I mean, beyond the aircraft, this is about teaching these pilots how to think as well. I think really importantly, and it gets me wondering, because I think one of the things I really try to do on this show and make a massive point of is how do we get actionable insights from somewhere like test pilot school, which is so almost unrelatable for a lot of people in day-to-day jobs and stuff. And how do we find the best bits of that and get people to walk away from this really inspired with great ideas and sort of distill down the key concepts there and let people sort of walk away with the best of that? So, I mean, the test pilots who come in, the qualities that separate them, first of all, I mean, what are some of those really big ones you think that just make a great test pilot, future test pilot? And also then on the flip side of that, how do you sort of try to develop those key concepts and skills as well? So, I mean, innovation's a massive one, leadership, the integrity of yourself as well, that hard work. There's lots I could mention, but you're the person to talk in it. So yeah, how do you develop that in a person or for yourself? What's the best of test pilot school that people can take away from this in that realm?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think when you look at it from how you can relate outside of our traditional discipline, it's like setting that challenge for yourself that is just beyond where you think you can get to, and then having that discipline to go, I'm going to try to go do that. It's a blessing and a curse. I'll share a story. I remember I was sitting on my aunt's couch. I'm from Long Island, New York, so I'm sitting on her couch. I was back from a mission flying the C-17 operationally, and it's a Sunday morning, and on the TV was the New York City Marathon, and I heard myself say it. I'm like, I could never run a marathon. And as I said it out loud, I was like, damn it, now I gotta go run a marathon, right? Which I have done. And it's that kind of, how do you have that discipline yourself to set that challenge just beyond where you think you can get to, and that incredible satisfaction of going, yeah, I did that. Like,
Yeah.
We see that, I think, in students. You see that kind of trait throughout our graduates, and I think it's one that we could share a lot with the world, that going and doing that. I will say also, maybe another relatable trait is one you're wearing right now. Process is greater than the outcome, right? We can come up with the most incredible test plan and go through this process, and the outcome is it's not ready yet, right? So really, it's that I can't tell you, if you measure your decision by the outcome, you maybe haven't learned anything. But if you can measure your decision making by the process that you went through, and we can teach the students that sort of process, that sort of discipline, then we know we've come to the best outcome, regardless of what that is. So I saw that shirt and I was like, oh yes, that's perfect.
So thank you for the head nod towards the shirt. I'm glad it's appreciated. It's a quote that really resonates with me, especially. And on that note, I mean, I think we spoke a bit about sort of the leadership points towards the students, right? But I'd love to kind of dig into your experience there as well. So on your side of things, I mean, naturally going into any kind of a job, especially one like your one where you're at right now, I mean, I can tell you're doing a fantastic job and great work in what you're doing, but can't have always been easy, right? Must have been a lot to learn, a lot of adaptation, a lot of leadership that you probably learned kind of early on in your career as well, that you've leaned into and tried to sort of apply into this. A little bit like me, I guess, in some ways. I took a lot from my tennis career, and now I've tried to put a lot of the things I learned there into what I'm doing here at the gym with my business, and also what I'm doing just kind of professionally wise too. So on your side of things, I don't know, what are some of the best things you learned along the way, leadership wise, that are really sort of paying dividends right now in test pilot school?
Yeah. So what I think I fell into the trap that a lot of people do, where they equate leadership with charisma,
Mm.
right? And you either have it or you don't have it. And I remember somebody who I thought was just this charismatic, completely natural leader go, hey, Yeti, what leadership books have you read recently? And I'm like, excuse me? And here's somebody I thought was just like this natural leader. And he's like, no, it's a skill. You have to develop it. You have to learn it. You have to grow it and cultivate it. And I think approaching it from that no, it's not just this static mindset, that it is a growth mindset you can put towards leadership, is incredibly powerful. My form of leadership, I generally subscribe to the servant leader methodology. I like, for real, it is truly humbling walking through the hallways when you look at these students and you've gotten to review their careers. You see them and how incredibly passionate they are, but also how humble they are themselves. And you're like, wow, I just want to do whatever I can to make you the best kind of version of yourself.
Yeah.
In that, I actually find, and granted, I have the privilege of working with people who are already accomplished in their career, but I find bending your leadership style to the needs of your team versus expecting the team to bend towards your leadership style is much more effective, right? So just saying, hey, what do you need in your leader to be, again, the best version of yourself? And then when you take that on an organizational level, what does this organization need to come together and bring it forward? So being able to identify that and give that back to the unit is where I like to
Yeah.
place myself in the leadership to that.
Absolutely. So something else that I want to touch on quickly as well now is that we've spoken a bit about test pilots coming into this school, but the journey to test pilot school begins way before test pilot school is even on the cards, right? And I've always believed as well, a quote I heard from someone was, maybe once or twice in your life, someone's going to ask you to do something great, and you need to make sure that you're ready to go and do that, essentially. So youngsters listening in maybe right now, or people who are interested in test pilot school generally, way before test pilot school is even something that they're maybe even considering, or something that they're seeing way into the future, what do you need to be doing now? And I don't mean just academically or, with getting into the military, but just for oneself as well. What are some of those big ones that are just going to help you along the way and make you what I like to call kind of just an easy yes, when that opportunity maybe comes around for them?
Yeah. So first off, it's all backgrounds, right? So it's pilots, it's navigators, it's space operators, it's our enlisted force, it's our engineers, it's our analysts, it's our cyber, right? It's you don't need to think, okay, I have to go do aeronautical engineering and I have to be a pilot. Absolutely do something that you're passionate about. So focus there. And then you're going to ride a lot of ups and downs throughout life, throughout your career. And you find that people who have a lot of pillars built up are the ones that are going to be able to withstand that, the longevity of that journey, right? It's not, hey, I'm going to sprint to this. It's, hey, how do I build myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually to be ready for what life challenges happen, and just kind of as you said, when opportunity knocks, how do you know that you're ready? So I would say find where your passion is, draw to that, build up your pillars. If you have weak areas, have the discipline and motivation to lean into them, and work through that.
Yeah, definitely. And then kind of on that career front as well, I think now's maybe a good time to sort of dig into that just a little bit too. Something that obviously you've alluded to already, and you see pretty commonly, I think now, just with how things are going. So test pilot school, obviously trains professionals both air and also in the space domain, like you said. Curious, how closely are those worlds becoming connected right now, especially in test pilot school? I'd love to learn a little bit
Yeah,
more about that, and how that's kind of how these two massive worlds are colliding.
that's great. Yeah. So we have a flight test course, a space test course, and an enlisted test course. Our enlisted test course is about 6 weeks long. And while they interact with the other students, a little bit less so. Our flight and space test courses are 60% overlapped. So all of those students are in the same classroom. They all have this same, as we call, class mom, the one supervisor. They all have the same senior ranking officer classmate who helps lead them through. So they are lockstep through the curriculum. The only areas that diverge, as you would expect, is when I'm teaching flight sciences, I'm doing that to the flight test course. When I'm speaking astrosciences, I'm doing that to the space test course. Everything else is overlapped. We put the space testers in the T-38s. We put them in the control rooms. We put them in C-12s. We put them in gliders. We take our flight testers and we put them onto our robotics on orbit trainer. For there, when we have the satellites, we sit there and they see how to operate the satellites. We've got the DAF's first multi-domain operations floor sitting in the building next door that we've developed. And really, when the warfighters are warfighting, they're doing it as a joint team, right? So that means when our testers are testing, they're doing it as a joint team. And then I have to teach the students to fight as a joint team.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
they're completely intertwined, learning from each other, right? Some of that most valuable learning happens in the homeroom, in their own room afterwards, after the courses, when they're just talking about, oh yeah, I did this or I did that, and they're sharing all of those experiences together.
Yeah, absolutely. My mum, and I'm sure a lot of other people's mums always said to shoot for the stars, right? And I feel like that's becoming less of a quote and more actually a genuine reality statement for a lot of people too. I'd love to know, people listening in as well, kind of thinking about maybe their career paths and what they want to do with their lives, and what's the coolest thing I could imagine myself doing as a young kid. I'd love to know what excites you the most really about the future of space operations. How could test pilot school play a piece of that in terms of a career path towards getting to some of these things? And yeah, I mean, if you were shooting for the stars now, as a youngster going into this, I mean, where would you try and take it in terms of a career long down the line?
Yeah, what's really exciting about the Space Force and the Space Test Course right now is that for the first time, the warfighters are really owning the development of these systems, right? It's not just here's a system given to us and we have to, we'll operate it, right? It's how do we develop this capability? How do we make this a warfighting asset that's going to go ahead and ensure that the troops on the ground, the sailors out on the ships, the pilots flying out in the aircraft. How do we make sure that in the space domain we're protecting those, right? And it's really fun to watch this brand new service come into its own and going, no, we're not going to just sit by and be handed a piece of technology. We're going to help develop that. We're going to test that. We're going to do developmental test on it, operational test on it. We're going to develop the tactics and techniques and procedures, and really bring that into its whole capability that it can be. So it's an exciting time, I think, for the Space Force right now. And then again, it's just that how do we teach how we fight, right? Practice how you play. It's the same kind of concept. How do we instill that in the students? And for those youngsters that are looking at, what do I need to do to be here? Again, I'll go back to find where your passion is, and go from there. You look at NASA, not that I can speak for them, but if you look at who the astronauts are, just go through their bios. They're everybody. They're people who found their passion, excelled at it, and then said, hey, I want to take that into a different environment. And I think the same thing applies here in the test world.
Completely agreed. So I think now's a good time to get into the future as well then. So we kind of spoke about it on space, but let's talk about test pilot school and the future there. So sitting really at the center of all of it, right? Incredible tech, AI, autonomy, advanced aircraft, space. It's all the things. A lot of TPS really is part of that, a massive, massive part of that. So over the next couple of decades, or the next decade, if you want to focus in on that, how is the role? I mean, like we said at the start of the podcast, right? Since Chuck, a lot has changed. A lot of tech has changed. A lot of TPS has changed. So much of it has evolved to accommodate new technologies and everything coming through the pipeline. Over the next decade, I mean, what do you think that's going to look like for test pilot school, for people coming in, the programs, the aircraft, all of it? What do you think it's going to look like?
Yeah, I think they're going to continue to need to be technologists, and maybe that isn't new, and we just have to find that again. And that's been a lot of the modernization process. Is what in test we don't get the finished product, right? We're doing a lot of that capability development and making sure the students can continue to speak that language, right? So that when they're ready, when they're graduating here, they have the language to speak, the knowledge to go, okay, this is the next generation of technologies that I'm going to be able to work and operate with. So to that end, we're in a kind of a process where we're learning how to be continuously updating, right? And a more agile, continuous improvement process through the school, where the curriculum is not a static entity. It's in response to what we're seeing, right? You're seeing a lot more autonomy. Okay, we're going to teach a lot more autonomy. Now, I'm still going to teach test fundamentals, right? But instead of using a simple pedostatic system to teach test foundations, now I can use in a more advanced system to teach test foundations, right? How do I incorporate this new test technique into what the students are going to see? And a lot of that is kind of in the emerging technology. So in the school, a big part of that modernization process is now, how do we sustain that? How do we make that just a continuous improvement process? The other areas, and I alluded to it earlier, was I think the school sits at the heart of the enterprise, right? We have our graduates who are our blue patches there. I consider those the guardians of the warfighter. And here at the school, I have my black border patches. And those are those people that went through that crazy funnel pipeline to go ahead and be testers. Now they go and they cut themselves, cut their teeth in a test enterprise. Then the community selects them to come back and actually teach the next generation of testers to come out. So when I'm looking at what the school does, it's a like a fluid dynamic with the entire enterprise, right? So it's not just, a one-way pipeline. It's always coming back. So different areas that we're exploring are, okay, how do I help all of these graduates, once they're out there, test better? So we're developing what we're calling Doolittle Labs. And that's how do I continuously improve the art and science of test, right? It really is a craft. So how do I support those different test teams that are out there to go, okay, yeah, we haven't seen that bit of technology, or you need something that we don't quite have. Let's flow some brain power at that, and help develop that kind of capability. And that's what we're looking at, is a little bit of that, what we're calling Doolittle Labs, to how do we better the art and science of test? How do I continue to help the enterprise experiment? We're seeing a lot of that, what we call technology readiness level. How do I get help keep that skill alive to develop that technology, make it more and more ready, always with, again, a warfighter focus. So that's one of the areas we're expanding into. And the other is, I kind of alluded to it, a fraction of the enterprise, both on the air and space side, is military. And then out of that military, there's only a small fraction that wind up graduating test pilot school, being blue patches, and becoming those test leaders. So what can test pilot school do for the rest of the test enterprise? So we're looking at standing up a T&E university, which is, all right, how can we also accelerate the learning of all of our incredible civilians or military personnel who don't have the opportunity to come through our long courses? How do we help ensure that they're ready to go out and lead and take some of that on-the-job burden training from our units and bring that back to the schoolhouse? Just a couple of the things that I see us kind of working towards here at the school.
Big things. And I would love to, as a really a lifelong fan of this kind of stuff, there's always got to be a section of this podcast for just the aircraft, right?
Yep.
So the big one that I really want to talk about today is Vista. So I got to walk past it. I got to have an up close look at it, and I think you walk past an F-16 and it's imposing, and it's a hell of a thing, right? I mean, you can't deny the aura of an F-16. Vista is something else. Really, it's a national asset, and the history, but also what it's doing, truly a remarkable thing. I'd love to talk about some of the future of that too. Vista seems to me like one of those things that one day it's going to be another Bell X-1 in the Flight Test History Museum, but I feel like it's got a massive history ahead of it before that ever happens too. It's kind of a self-writing history book, really, isn't it? So something like Vista, what role really is that playing in test pilot school? What is it teaching people? What are you learning from it? And what is the future role for that platform, do you think?
Yeah, so Vista was originally was an in-flight simulator, right? So a variable stability in-flight simulator, where you could say to a student, again, so test pilot school is heavily in academics, and actually I don't think we've mentioned that it is a master's degree program. So they're going through an advanced flight training program at the same time as a master's degree program. But It used to be, how do we tell them how a flight control law is built and then show them, right? And when you modify something in a flight control system, being able to really internalize that, let's take them airborne and go, hey, this is what it looks like when the actuators are saturated, right? This is what it looks like when the damping's too low. This is what it looks like when the stick force per G, so how much you have to pull on the stick to get a certain amount of G, is not in harmony with the other control surfaces or with the mission set, right? There's you can teach that academically, but then taking it airborne and seeing it live, how that feels, is something that's kind of, I think, one of the hallmarks of test pilot school, really getting that hands-on kind of education that way. So we traditionally used Vista for that. Then quite a few years ago, because the way Vista works, so I have like this little sandbox, this safety bubble that's developed. And if the control log goes out of that, you flip upside down, whatever happens, it clips the safety strip, and now you're just flying a regular F-16. Because of the nature of that, what we realized is, hey, actually, if you have an AI agent and you want to keep it in a sandbox and let it operate the aircraft, but still have a safety bubble around it, that's exactly what Vista can do. So Vista's been undergoing a series of upgrades to be able to have the onboard compute power to do that. We've done a lot of successful testing of AI agents in control of that aircraft and different mission sets from there. So that's been a huge growth area for us, and one of those examples of where test pilot school can be a leading indicator, right? We can go, oh, right, there's not a program that's flying this strictly in this venue, but how do we help develop that technology so then the programs that come down can do that? When we made all those modifications into your Bell X-1, it's been redesignated. It is an X-plane, so it is the X-62 aircraft right now. So right now, test pilot school is operating an X-plane, which is really neat for the students and for the staff and the entire community.
There always has to be an X-plane at Edwards, right?
Yep. Oh, well, we have the X-59 too, which is just fun watching. You're like, oh, wow, it's airborne here. Edwards is really, the center of the airspace test universe.
It really is.
Incredibly humbling.
Well and truly, it really is.
And exciting. As you mentioned, it is fun to see everything flying here. I remember taxiing out. I'm currently instructing in the C-12. And the students, doing all the checklists, getting ready, they have their sortie they're trying to prep for. And I took the aircraft. I'm like, just look up, like the B-21's taxiing in front of you. Like, stop for a second, Oh, and wait, we have to pause because the F-35 and the F-22 are going to taxi out in front of us. It is a really fun place to live and work.
You couldn't make it up, could you? I think last thing I really want to touch on here today is just a little bit of a head nod really to your career as well. So things that you've flown, obviously C-17, but also A400, T-38 as well. What are some of your favorites? And I think people love a little story, right? I mean, you must have way too many to choose from, but I mean, whatever comes to mind first, you got a great flight story for the people listening in today before we wrap this up?
Oh, I listened to your podcast with General Wickard, and I loved his answer of, like, what's your favorite aircraft? Oh, the next one. It is really exciting to think about what's coming down next. There's always going to be a special place in my heart for the C-17, where you have this aircraft that is so purpose-built for its mission. And I think as a test pilot, when you see aircraft that, multi-role, I get it. We need to do it. We've got a lot of mission sets, but when you see an aircraft like that's built for a mission set, oh, it's just glorious. As far as fun stories go for aircraft I've flown here at the school, I just talked about the C-17, right? And actually, my favorite fighter was the F-18. And it turns out, because they're both McDonnell Douglas aircraft and they fly very similarly. And I was like, when I got into that aircraft, I'm like, this is amazing. I love this. We throw the students in a lot of different aircraft because I don't know what they're going to see, right? I don't know what they're going to experience. So to help them be able to extrapolate, I need to give them more than the one data point they came from. So that's why we have our qualitative evaluation program, where we bring a dozen different aircraft in to be able to fly, and they can take away little nuggets from that. My class was fortunate enough to have the Goodyear blimp. So it went down to LA, and you think of this big lumbering thing, and you're like, oh, okay, and the pilot at the time said, okay, step on the rudder and turn around. And I'm like, okay, so I'm expecting this like huge, like monumental shifting thing. And you get in there and you forget that your forward speed is like nothing. So your turn radius is nothing. So you hit the rudder and you just go, and I'm like light bulbs opening up at that moment, and that really is what we're trying to do with the students in this qualitative evaluation program. And I got to do that in the Goodyear blimp.
That is so much fun. Oh my God, I love that story so much. Well, I think now is a great time to kind of give a head nod to maybe some other things as well. So we've reached the end of the 4 questions, but this is the time that we have really for the shameless plug. So a couple of minutes really on just some of the big ones, right? I mean, just anything along your career path that you feel like people would benefit from. So maybe that was one of those books that you read. I know you mentioned about leadership books, anything that people should go and read, essential reading, anything on careers as well. So places to start, there's a great one. Where does this all begin? Getting to test pilot school, what's stage 1 really of that? What does that look like for people so they can go away from this and maybe look into that? And then anything going on that you want people to look at test pilot school or Edwards, or just expand on what we've spoken about today. It's your shameless plug, so fire away. Where are people going next after they wrap it up here?
I love it. That was about 20 questions into one. When you said what books, my mind went to Leaders Eat Last, which is a great book, but I also very lament it because I love to eat. And having to eat last is always a struggle for me as far as books go. Recent books, I really love Freedom's Forge, and it talks about the build up to World War II. And I think there's a lot of analogies that can be brought to our modern day situation. So I love that book as well right now. You know what? Shameless plugs. I come to test pilot school, right? If I'm going to plug anything, we want the best and the brightest and the hardest working. There's not a student here that's not a dreamer, not somebody who hasn't gone and go, okay, I want to do something big and important out there. That's kind of what we see. We want to take your skill throughout. Come with your dreams, and we'll supercharge them and get you out there, developing capabilities kind of for our warfighter. So, I guess parting shots, going back to my parents never told me no, right? Don't ever tell yourself no, right? Don't take yourself out of the game. Keep fighting for what you're passionate about and what you want to do. And it might not be the path that you had envisioned, but I think you'll shoot for the stars and you'll land.
I love that.
Land stars. Yeah.
I love that. That ties it in really nicely. Well, Yeti, Colonel Karlen, this has been such a pleasure and an honor. And can I just say also so much fun. I've really, really enjoyed listening to you today, hearing your stories, everything you're doing, but also personally walking away from this having learned a lot, and I know everyone else listening in today will have done exactly the same thing too. So I just want to say, I know, like you said, could have been a great flying day, but we really appreciate that you spent your time here with us. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Louis. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys also for listening today. This was episode 177. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes of the show, go and have a look at the channel. And if you'd like to listen to the future ones as well, make sure to hit the subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. See you in the next one. See you later.